Hello and welcome back to another episode of my weekly market overview. It's the 28th of June 2026. Let's get straight into it. First and foremost, we're going to start with the overall market and take a look at the Nasdaq Composite. So we've just come out of one heck of a bull run that started around early April all the way through till early June. I'm going to say it peaked, and then we've had this quite significant sell-off. Now, structurally, I'm going to argue that the Nasdaq Composite is currently structurally bearish. It made this big push to the upside, pulled back, a new higher high, and then breached this high low, made a change of character, and is now structurally bearish. It is looking like it's making a potential push to the downside at the minute and make a new structural low, which is not good. It's not good for the overall market, and it's not good for us growth traders. That's an issue. I am now in a position where I'm still actively looking for trades. I'm a trader, but I'm being very careful about execution. I'm also prioritizing risk management and risk exposure. So my risk exposure is a lot lower now than it typically would be if we were in this bull market style market that we had previously. Difficult times at the minute. Hopefully this is just a small correction and then we get some bullish continuations, but who knows what's going to happen. The markets are changing very dynamically, very strongly. So we could be at the beginning of a new bear market that could go on for weeks, months. I don't know, or we could just be in a small correction and then prices flip to the upside. We'll let time tell, and we'll just trade according to what we can see and tread carefully in terms of risk management and exposure management to the markets. Make sure that we're not overexposed in the markets and risking silly money when the market conditions are not favorable. Okay, so moving on, we're going to take a quick look at the tech sector. Now, interestingly, I think it was on Wednesday and Thursday, I run a screen a couple of times a day, and on Wednesday and Thursday, not a single tech stock successfully screened on the 4 or 5 flavors of screener that I run, which was quite a surprise because it's not something I've seen for several months now. So that was interesting. Tech stocks are at the minute a little bit out of favor. So structurally, the ETF, the XLK tech sector ETF, is still structurally bullish. It made this big push to the upside, which peaked around early June, I'm going to say, and then it made a massive pullback, 90% pullback, but then it's just sideways action at the minute. It's not made new highs, and it's certainly not made a bearish change of character. It's still not even tested the 50 moving average, so there is some hope there for the tech sector, but at the minute it is very sideways and very undecided. What is amazing at the minute that's going on is the healthcare sector. Let's take a look at this ETF. So this is XLV, the healthcare sector, and we had this big push to the downside, this massive push that sort of finished around end of March, pull back, and then we even had a new lower low. But since that happened around the end of April, we've actually had the healthcare sector making consistent higher highs and higher lows. If we look really carefully, we can see we had this low, and then we had this higher high, higher low, higher high, higher low, and we're currently at this epic push right here. So yeah, the healthcare sector is doing really, really strongly. It's massively outperforming the overall market, and it's massively outperforming the tech sector as well. And that is where a lot of the attention of this video will lie, because most of the stocks that have screened successfully over the last 3 or 4 days, maybe week or two, I'm seeing tons and tons of healthcare sector stocks pop their heads up, and I'm actually in one trade at the minute as well. So yeah, healthcare sector looks fantastic. So let's move on and let's take a look at the one trade that concluded last week, which was Micron Technology. Now, I entered this trade around the 12th of June and it concluded on the 23rd, I believe it was. So a little bit frustrating. The price went quite high up. We were over 2 hours in profit at one point. I think in last week's video we were about 2.2 hours in profit, so things were looking really good. I brought the stop loss up to trail the 10 moving average, and then we got this huge gap to the downside on Tuesday the 23rd, and that's what tapped me out at about 0.5 hours in profit. So a lot of money took off the table, unfortunately, but the downside was protected. Sod's law, it gapped to the upside. So Micron Technology is very volatile at the minute. It is gapping down and gapping up. as much as it's great to be in the ones where they gap up, it's scary being in the ones where they gap down, where you literally go from 2.2 hours in profit to being tapped out of 0.5 hours within the space of just 12 hours. That is a little bit intimidating to see. So yeah, I'm happy to not be in this trade anymore. I'm happy it's concluded and we got a small profit out of it. So yeah, that's great. It hasn't been added to the journal yet, but that's something I need to do possibly after I finish making this video. So now we're going to move on to the healthcare sector. This is where it seems like all the action is. I'm currently in this trade at the minute. It's Adaptive Biotechnology, ADPT. Really nice trade, really nice setup. So what I was looking at was how we had this huge push to the upside, 56% push to the upside. And then we had this consolidation. If we drop down a couple of time frames, we can see this looks a little bit nicer. The price got really tight. It didn't quite respect the 20 moving average, but it did inside here. We had this huge gap to the downside, but it closed above the 20 moving average, which had my attention. This was really nice, constricting tight price action. And then we got this big explosive move to the upside on Wednesday the 24th. That's when I entered. I think I dropped down to the 1 hour, tried to get as tighter entry as I could, but this 1 hour candle was massive. What's also worth mentioning is the relative strength. So ADPT was making new highs, made a high low and higher highs. And if you look down at the IXIC down by where my webcam footage is on the left, you'll see that the IXIC, the Nasdaq Composite, was making lows, big candles to the downside. Back up to ADPT, we can clearly see that this was making lows, this was making highs. So the relative strength was phenomenal on this stock. That's another thing that had my attention, something that I'm quite keen to keep an eye out for. So again, we had this tight price action, big breakout, and we're currently still in this trade. Now we can't see the trade I'm in, unfortunately, because I changed brokers this week just gone. So once the Micron Technologies trade concluded, I withdrew my money from that broker. And then since then, I've plugged my money into a ISA, as we call it in the UK, temporarily until I figure out which broker I'm going to go with for trading on margin. So the ISA account, I can't plug that into TradingView, so we can't see the live metrics of the trade, but I am currently in this trade, which is around just under 2 hours in profit. About 8% in the bag. Brought the stop loss up to break even as well, just to protect the downside. Yeah, ADPT, healthcare stock, absolutely fantastic trade. Although the broader market, the Nasdaq Composite and also the tech sector is a little bit haywire at the minute and pushing to the downside, there are some real hidden gems, some beautiful growth stocks hidden away, specifically in the healthcare sector, that are putting in these massive pushes to the upside. And I'm grateful that I'm in this one right now. For the remainder of the video, I just want to show you 4 or 5 of these healthcare stocks because they're just amazing. We'll start with, how do you pronounce this one? Travere Therapeutics, TVTX. So we had this big 74% push to the upside. Quite a large consolidation, but look at how it respected the 20 and the 50 moving average. It did bounce off the 50 a couple of times here, and for a long period of time it respected the 20 as well. And we got this big burst as well. This happened on the 12th of June, big burst to the upside, and since it's made a 14% move. Absolutely fantastic, really nice move. Next we have TGXT. This was another fantastic example. We had a big push to the upside, didn't mark up how much this was worth. Let's have a quick look. So this was about 35% push to the upside, really nice strong stock. Quite tight consolidated pullback, and it tested the 50 moving average on the money, and then put in this big burst on the 3rd of June, which is something we like to see, put in a 57% push to the upside. Unfortunately, I wasn't scanning for growth stocks. I hadn't quite switched to this strategy on these days in early June. Huge shame, missed some big moves, but it is what it is. Next, we have Twist Bioscience Corporation, another beautiful looking stock. If we look, we had this 66% push to the upside. Really tight consolidation here, and then a huge push to the upside on the 11th of June where it burst out of this tight range. It tested the 10 moving average. If we look around the time that we had this price action here, the Nasdaq Composite was tanking to the downside. If we look down here, so this had really strong relative strength, which is something that we really want to see. Big burst to the upside, and the rest is history. 57% push to the upside. Absolutely phenomenal move. Next, we move on to Verisight. I believe that's how you pronounce it. Verisight. I might have got that wrong. VCYT. Fantastic one. Look at this. So we had a 35% push to the upside. Really nice tight flag pattern here where price consolidated, tested a 10 moving average, barely touched the 20 moving average, and then burst out on the, on the 16th of June, and has put in since about 32% move from the lows here to the highs, and it's still moving to the upside. This is another phenomenal example of how the healthcare sector is really booming at the minute, and there's some real relative strength in this as well. On the days that the Nasdaq Composite was moving to the downside here, these stocks barely flinched. They stayed really tight and just continued putting in highs. So yeah, another one, VCYT, really nice stock. I wish I was trading growth stocks at the time earlier in the month. Unfortunately, I didn't switch to this strategy, like I said, until later in the month. Next, we have TGX, 10X Genomics. I think I mentioned this one in last week's video. This was a little bit choppy, but the principles still apply. It had this huge push to the upside, 81% move to the upside, pulled back and barely tested the 20 moving average, and then burst out on the 15th of June. Since then, it's put in 26% move to the upside, and it's still moving by the looks of it. It's been a little bit choppy. It did gap to the downside, but it didn't even breach a 10 moving average. So the relative strength is there. Fantastic stock. Just a little bit on the choppy side, but another great example. Last but certainly not least, we have SLS Life Sciences Group, SLS. 97% push to the upside. Then we had this push to the downside. It was a really nice tight consolidation. It did breach a 20 moving average, but it didn't quite make it to the 50, and the price action kept pretty tight. And then on the, depending on which candle I would have entered on, this one wasn't the most convincing candle on the 22nd of June, but the 23rd was a lot nicer. All in all, it's put in a 52% move to the upside since. I mean, look at Friday's candle. That's just crazy. That one candle by itself, let's just measure that. That's a 17% move in one day. I mean, speaks volumes, really. Wow. Yeah, these healthcare stocks are moving really nicely at the minute. I don't know how long this bubble is going to last. I don't know how many big pushes to the upside we're going to get, because obviously a lot of these that I've shown you today are quite extended. So we do need some kind of pullback on all of these before we can look for continuations. I don't know if we're going to get that. I don't know if we're going to get choppy price action and then a push to the downside if the healthcare sector starts to struggle like the wider market is struggling at the minute. I'm not sure. But while it's moving as it is, and if it keeps giving us passing the screener process and also giving us setups, I'm going to keep executing on healthcare stocks because the sector's moving and putting in some absolutely amazing moves. So that's it for this week. Although overall the market is struggling, we have got the healthcare sector that's holding things up for us growth traders, growth stock traders, and giving us some nice opportunities. Long may it last until the technology sector starts playing ball again. I'll keep trading the healthcare sector and picking off those bioscience stocks as and when they come available. I'm really happy with that. I'm in one nice trade at the minute. As I showed you, the stop loss has been brought up to break even, so that position is protected. I'm going to keep trading within my ISA for the time being. So unfortunately, I won't be able to show those live metrics on the screen like I was able to with the previous broker. That's a little bit disappointing. I'll see what I can work out, figure out if I can find a way of showing you my live trades as well, because I want to be able to give that level of transparency going forwards like I have done previously with past trades. So that's it for this week. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one.